as a guide on what it is that, and also overhead, you might do a roundhouse, you might do a straight drop cross, you might do a backhand. You gotta expect this, or this, or that, or this, or that, and yes, there's no mistake. Tell you what, those different positions, you're not fully prepared, right? Let's talk about how we're going to put the inside and outside club techniques together, right? So we have family groups, we have created two different family groups, right? We have to over here for a moment, right? So we have the idea of having to switch between defining the storm versus securing the storm, depending on whether or not it's an even stance or an odd stance, right? So we were discussing even stance, odd stance, and how just by looking at your opponent to see whether, assuming that you have decided on one side, you've decided to keep your right side in the front right now, right? And you see that I have the club on the right. So now you know that we're going to end up in an even stance, right? Right to right. Had I had the club on my left, then we would end up in an odd stance. Right to left, or left to right, right? Make sense? Right? So, we talked about the fact that if this happens, it would be securing the storm, right? That's what fits. Obviously, defying the storm doesn't work. He could change his footwork, of course, but we're not talking about that right now, right? He could switch, yes, we know that. He could step in, and that could be a viable, solution. Otherwise, he sees it early on, he's already on me with his left arm, I'm already coming in, and it just became defying the storm. Because it became an even stance. Right? But typically, if let's say we're right here, it was an even stance to start with. Right now, defying the storm is going to be a really good option for him. And of course, it means automatically that calming the storm will work just as well. Right? Which is first it block. Yes, first you should hit the guy's arm. Same time, when I say make sure it's an actual striking block, injure my arm a little bit right there. Right? It's important. Right? So here's calming the storm, I'll go back to defying the storm. So both of those are very good options for the even stance on the inside of the arm. If it's on the out, if it's inside of the other arm, so now it's odd stance on the inside of the arm. Securing the storm works really well. Right? So again, come over there. Right? Very good. Right? So. Alright, now look up. So, now let's talk about something that's a lot of fun, and that is, and that is family grouping to a series of different stimuli. Alright? Again, put your left side forward. I'm going to have it cover my right, and do securing the storm, the first part, right? Here. Now, that was just out there roundhouse, right? If I go overhead, do obstructing the storm. Then if I go straight in, flipping the storm. You go like maybe one strike further, even though people know where we're at. Let's try that again, especially this side right here. So we got three different techniques right here, and we can put more together than just that. But what I'm doing is I'm calibrating him, meaning I'm giving him the opportunity to switch from one to the other very rapidly. Instead of working the whole technique, obviously we're not doing that, but even more so, what I'm going to do is switch between these different attacks now much more often. And that really is to simulate what a street fighter would probably do, or a good fighter would do, and that is like fake from one to the other, where you don't know if it's going to come straight in, or roundhouse, overhead, right, or backhand, right? By the way, the backhand is to turning storm, right? But there, so he doesn't care which one of those I do. Anthony's already pretty good with this, so I can do obstruction. I mean, I can do an overhead attack. He doesn't care. He knows right to go to obstructing the storm. That's just one of the options he's got. It's not the only option he's got. If I go here, securing the storm, it's not perfect. Right, there you go. If I go backhand, it's right in turning the storm. Right. If I go straight in, right, it's right in clipping the storm. That's how those things relate to each other. Right. So What we want to do is, in order to be as efficient as possible in switching from one of these techniques to the other, is to calibrate our students. What I mean by that is the fastest switches. I want you to be able to be capable of the fastest switches between these techniques. You have to be just as quick switching from one technique to the other as the opponent is switching from one attack to the other, right? So I can clearly go from here to this, to that, to this very, very easily. And it's likely that I would. Exactly what I would do. If I would hit somebody, if I would threaten somebody with a club, I wouldn't be that obvious. I would see how he responds, just like in regular fighting, and I would try to get him somewhere else, right? The only way we didn't add to that right there is if I hit down to the leg, right? Just use the downward, outward block and turn that right into a check in the storm, right? And so it's not a big deal. Kenpo has all of this. So he doesn't care if I'm going overhead, if I'm going roundhouse, right? If I'm going thrust straight in, if I go low towards his leg, right? If I go backhand. So those were Ed Parker Kenpo techniques, each one of them. Nothing changed in any one of those techniques, but that's how those techniques relate to each other. Each one of those Ed Parker Kenpo techniques controls not just the first club attack, but any follow-up of the opponent. So if I'm going here and he goes to obstruct in the storm, yeah, I want to try to fight him, but it's going to be very hard because he's putting pressure on my elbow right away. First thing he does is from the first move, he immediately puts pressure, he controls my arm, puts pressure on my elbow, and makes countering very difficult for me to do. If I'm doing a roundhouse, he realizes the opportunity to go right for the attack, the face, and make the forward of my arm. Again, to prevent secondary action. Again, from here, yeah, I can try to hit him, but now I got to control my, I'm trying to attract my arm, he's controlling my arm, he's moving away from this punch, he's dislocating my shoulder while I'm trying to reach into the punch. Very difficult for him to do, for me to do, because all he has to do is continue, and there goes my punch, because I'm trying to save my shoulder, so we're protecting ourselves against the second strike. Backhand, it's very obvious how he's protecting himself against the second strike, right? If I'm going, which one didn't I do yet? Or clip in the storm, right? That's lower, so when it comes to control, divert heat, control his arm is more difficult because here, for example, roundhouse, right? It was easier for him to trap my arm because it's right here. And it was here, easier for him to get my arm because it's up high, right? And then doing the overhead attack, easy for him to control my arm because again, it's up high, right? And now, when I'm going down here, it's a little harder to control my arm, isn't it? All right, so so instead of doing that, that's why you go for pinning the arm, right, and then hitting open targets. Because the arm is that low, yeah, you might not be able to just put me in an arm bar or something or grab my arm. That wouldn't be worth it. But my face is wide open, right? And the same thing if I go low to the leg like that, he goes into checking the storm, right? So again, that's why checking the storm does what it does, by the way. Even the regular checking the storm, right? I'm going here. Why do the kicks? Because this arm is far away. How are you going to control this arm right now when he comes in this way? You're going to control it by moving the arm away from you with the next kick. So it's very hard for him to use this, the weapon. So sometimes you cannot grab the arm. So you're going to somehow control that arm that's holding the weapon in some other way. Alright, so we have two techniques that have to do that. Right now, we're not going to actually walk the check in the storm option right now. Here, and overhead, go on the front, right here. against the straight. Well, okay, let's go this way then. Go fast, and from here, that's the easier way to block it. Go for the roundhouse again, easier block. Go overhead, easier block. Go backhand, the easiest block. I'm doing it all from right here, but depending on what the angle is coming from, right? One arm might have to deal with it, the other arm might have to get involved. If it's straight, then definitely this other arm gets involved, right? If it's roundhouse, low, then I might have to go downward with this one. The arms tell you what to do. The hardest thing right now is probably going to be the motion of your feet in relation to it, right? So let me have you over here just for a moment. You will have to move your feet differently. So meaning that if I'm doing this number, your front foot moves up to the side, right? Just like you're doing, right? Same, and almost exactly the same step of obstructing the storm, right? Your front foot moves up to the side. But when it's securing the storm, you move straight in, right? You don't move up to the side. Does that make sense? So that's the only thing that can be difficult to go, oh, hang on, my feet have to be coordinated with my block. So that's actually the second decision together with what you're striking with. Right? So once you figure out how to block, then that has some consequence for your feet and your company. Right? So get that worked out, and the rest of the technique will fall into place. Great. Actually, let's have a little bit more footwork in it. So the same thing I did, we start with the same idea. I'm just basically like getting used to just immediately adjusting from one to the other. Right? The initiation of my attack, makes him immediately realize what he has to switch to. And then we're going to do that with a little bit more footwork, that's all. Every once in a while I can actually commit to one of those, right? But most of the time I'm just going to give him like the beginning of it so he can tell whether or not he's able to switch from one to the other. Because when I do commit, he should be able to throw right into that technique. Does that make sense? So that's how it goes. So we're going to pick that up more right now. Just see if you can put those three ideas together.